Hi guys, welcome to the Overdrive Digital Show. A very warm welcome, especially to Dilip Kumar and Rahul Gaokar. Thanks so much for being patient with us. There was no April Fool's joke coming from our team. We've been here every Friday. 6 o'clock is when the show goes live. Very soon, Bert, Rohit, and Simran will be joining us to answer all of your queries. So you can jot down all your questions in the comments section. We'll start off with our first story. There's a revised MG ZS EV that now comes with a bigger battery with an ICAT claimed range of 461 kilometers. That's a healthy 40 odd kilometer increase over the old model. But as we know, we don't drive in laboratory conditions where these tests are done. So we've done our own quick test to see how far the 2022 model of the ZS EV can go with regular driving. That's the city, highway, and some performance driving too.
This is the MG ZS EV 2022. Now, apart from the obvious visual differences, it's got a larger battery pack, it's got a little bit more power, it's got a little bit more tech inside as well. But importantly, that larger battery pack means more range on top of what was already a pretty efficient EV. That means that we've got the bravery to bring it to Lonavala for a shoot, which from Mumbai is a 110 kilometer one-way trip with a lot of uphill driving. Now, this is a scenario that we see a lot of users actually using their EVs for. Driving it in the city during the day, and maybe on the weekend or maybe early in the morning, they bring it out to a hill station for a little bit of a family drive. Can the updated MG ZS EV fit that role just a little bit better? We're going to find out. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You can always charge your EV on the way up or on the way down, but that feels like it's a little bit besides the point. You're not necessarily going to have to stop to fuel up a regular IC engine car for 30 to 45 minutes, are you? But anyway, for an EV to be more readily accepted by the general public, range always helps. Now, you could argue that an EV is best used as a city car, and you would be right. But for some people, this is going to be their only car. So making a trip like this just a little easier, a little more within reach, is definitely something that's going to add brownie points to any EV's book. In the ZS EV's case, battery capacity has grown to 50.3 kilowatt-hour from the previous car's 44.5 kilowatt-hour. Now, that might not seem like a big increase. In fact, even the claimed range, which is 461 kilometers, which is up from the previous car's 419 kilometers, isn't a very big change. But as you'll find with EVs, that every little bit matters. It could be the difference between getting home and charging your car or needing to call roadside assistance, which, by the way, MG does have via an SOS button right there. Going over some of the changes in the cabin of the facelifted ZS EV, right ahead of you is a crisp digital instrumentation panel that replaces those lovely analog dials, which I'm a little saddened by, but it definitely does a lot to instantly make the ZS EV's cabin feel a lot more modern. What also helps is the larger infotainment screen, which unfortunately has done away with some of those physical controls. But overall, the UI of the infotainment is definitely better. In fact, it's essentially what you find on the Aster, which is a good point. Now, this cabin might be the Aster's cabin, but everything just feels like it's put together a little better. Of course, the standout has always been the very soft touch surfaces like the top of the dash and the face of the dash right here, and that remains. But MG's gone a little bit further and added some stuff in the back as well, with the rear AC vents, the middle seat headrest, and that flip-out center armrest being some of the highlights. Fortunately, it doesn't get the Aster's gimmicky AI assistant, but otherwise has the full suite of connected tech, the 360-degree camera, and advanced driver assistance systems that we've seen to sometimes add value to the driving experience. As for the looks, it borrows a lot from the Aster, but the blacked-out grille certainly makes the new ZSEV stand out. And while the previous ZSEV wasn't a slouch in the performance department, the new one takes it even further. Power's up to 176 PS from 143, and torque remains the same at 280 Newton meters. Now, that comes via a single electric motor that's placed on the front axle, powering the front wheels. And you do feel traction control step in a few times if you get a little too enthusiastic with the throttle in a corner. Now, this is actually where Eco mode helps out. In normal mode, you do feel like you're lacking a little bit of that modulation that you might want right at the top of the pedal. When you're going around slow roundabouts, it does feel like a little tap isn't enough and a slightly stronger tap is just too much. Eco completely smooths that out. Of course, if you do put your foot all the way down, you will definitely appreciate the fact that the ZS EV in our testing was a whole second quicker than what MG claims for the 0 to 100 kmph run. What's also nice is that they really haven't restricted the top speed, so they claim 180 kmph for this car, but obviously you're gonna go through your battery pack with that. A 0 to 100 kmph run in 7.5 seconds is impressive, and not just at the price it's offered. We saw exactly the same figures in all of the drive modes too, with only the Curse mode slightly affecting braking performance. You get better braking with the pure mechanical all-wheel disc brakes. During our testing, we saw energy usage shoot up to 3.3 km per kilowatt hour, meaning if you drove it flat out everywhere, you'd probably get about 165 km on a single charge. But most people aren't going to be doing that. Just to give you a little snapshot of what our usage has been like with the ZS EV, we got the car at 100%. It showed us a range of about 360 odd kilometers, which by our calculations, according to what figures we were getting in our city driving cycle, which is about 7.5 km per kilowatt hour, sounds exactly right. Now, to get those figures, the car was kept in its normal driving mode and driven as any regular owner might drive their car in the city, which is basically keeping up with traffic. Even on the expressway, we made sure that we were keeping up with traffic in the 90 to 100 km per hour range and just essentially not gunning it, but not really tortoising it either. With all our driving around in Mumbai yesterday and the testing, we were down to 55% odd, where we charged it for 30 minutes using a Type 2 25 kilowatt charger, and we got that figure back up to 78%. Now, when we left base this morning to come to Lonavala, that's how much charge we had, and we reached the top of Lonavala, which is quite a bit of a climb, with about 46% charge left. That's just 30% for a 110 odd kilometer journey with all that uphill. That's quite impressive. The ZS EV still charges at a max of 7.4 kilowatt via the supplied charger, so a full charge takes 8.5 to 9 hours using a regular socket at home. While 50 kilowatt DC charging nets you 0 to 80% of the charge in just 60 minutes, the more commonly available 25 kilowatt DC fast chargers should do the same in about 2 hours. To help you get a little more out of your battery, you could switch to Eco mode, which will immediately shoot up your driving range estimates. Now, considering we fell below the 50% charge mark, which is typically when range anxiety starts setting in. I mean, think about your phone. When you fall below 50%, don't you go looking for a charger? But anyway, what Eco mode does is dull throttle response, even though outright performance isn't affected in the least. And it affects the climate control system to essentially lessen the load on the car. Despite being in Eco mode, the ZS EV climbed these hills like a champ. Now, it's still got all that go, you just have to press a little further down on the pedal to get to it. And when you do, chances are you will appreciate that little extra bit of horsepower that they managed to squeeze out of this electric motor. Changes to the drivetrain aside, the MG ZS EV feels as confidence-inspiring to drive as ever, with a well-weighted steering and generally predictable handling, while the ride is flatter than the Aster, thanks to a lower center of gravity and doesn't inherit that car's tendency to bounce over small irregularities, thus making it a lot more comfortable to drive and be driven in. Now, while the ZS EV might not have paddle shifters to adjust the level of regenerative braking that you can achieve with the car, there is a handy toggle right on the center stack, and you can toggle from between it, acting almost like a regular IC engine with just the right amount of engine braking, or you can toggle it up to its highest setting in the KERS menu to get you near one pedal driving, where you only need the brake pedal to come to a complete halt. So the beauty of going up a hill is that you must come down it. And this is really where the regen braking of an EV helps add to your range. So if you're planning a trip that involves a lot of uphill driving, do keep in mind that you will be able to recuperate some of that energy on the way down and actually extend your range. In this particular scenario, we've done about 20 kilometers of downhill driving with a little bit of getting through Lonavala town itself, but we've only used up 10 kilometers of the range according to our distance to empty. Now we have a little over 55 kilometers to go and we've got 93 kilometers of range. Now that might be cutting it a little too close for a lot of people's comfort, but we do have a long downhill section coming up right now, and I think we can harvest a little more energy to get us there with, I'm gonna say, more than 35 kilometers to spare. Let's hope I'm right. Of course, we managed that and a little more, dropping the car back off with 11% charge remaining and well over the predicted 35 km of range to go. Given our energy usage of about 6 km per kilowatt hour in the city, it seems getting over 360 km of range on a single charge is very, very doable, which puts the MG ZS EV in a very niche segment of EVs that can currently achieve such a feat in India. Considering the standard battery warranty of 8 years and 1.5 kilometers with a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty, the MG ZS EV certainly seems like a great package for all it offers, prices being just about a lakh over the previous car when it was first introduced. If you're looking for a do-it-all EV, this new ZS EV just feels a lot more polished than the old car, and that makes it a very good buy.
So let's get Simran, Rohit and Bert on the show. I see a couple of questions about the ZS EV already. Hi Simran. Hi Rohit. Hi Bert.
Hi, Sonia.
Yes,
Hi,
Simran.
guys.
Hi Bert, hi
Hey,
Simran, hi Sohini.
hello, hello.
Are we echoing?
No, we are not.
Okay. Simran, there's the first question that we have is from Dilip. He says that MG should have introduced a 72 kilowatt hour battery. You know, it will reach 25 to 30 lakh range. Like, how far can a vehicle like that reach? If it has 500 kilometers in real time, it'll just trump its competition.
Yeah, so that's essentially the model that's being sold in the UK. So what happened in the UK is for 2022, they went from this 50 kilowatt hour battery pack to the 72, because obviously the UK is not as nascent stage an EV market as we are. So the 72 kilowatt hour battery pack, I think, would have made it a lot closer to 30 than 25 in terms of price, which might have been a little hard to digest, considering the previous model was 24 point something before the price increase. So the additional range, so whatever 14-15% that we've got as additional range from that 13% bigger battery, is puts the Zscv in this really niche spot where it's a nice premium mid-size crossover that has a real-world 350-kilometer plus range. I mean, we've driven some of the luxury EVs around, and cars costing a crore just about match that 350-kilometer real-world range.
So I'll just there's a point that I have to make over here, guys. Also happens to keep in mind is that as you go up the battery capacity, the 72 kilowatt hour battery, for instance, compared to the 50 kilowatt hour battery, your that 25 kilowatt hours that you're increasing it by also means you have to increase the number of modules that are there in that battery to get that capacity, and this considerably increases the weight of the vehicle in question. When you have that additional weight, and this is not small. These are not small increments; these are massive increments. The weight increase for those 20 kilowatt hours could be anywhere between 200 to 300 plus kilos that you're adding to the vehicle, and that would change what the vehicle, what in the case of the MG Zscv EV also, that would change what it could do in terms of range as well, because now you have to move not just those additional 300-400 kilos, you also got the body weight and the passengers inside. So range, of course, will get affected, and this works. These are basic physics. So the amount of energy that you would require to generate enough of momentum in a vehicle that heavy would again deplete the range that you would have or you could get from that kind of battery. So yes, theoretically, the larger battery will give you higher range, but the weight of the battery again pulls down that range. It affects the range adversely, which is why 50 kilowatt hours and a rough or a real world average of about 300 to 350 kilometers works pretty well. So you don't really need a larger battery pack. Now, why do luxury manufacturers do the larger battery packs in them, like the e-tron or the EQC, or even the I-Pace for that matter? Is because these vehicles are inherently heavy, and you need a larger output. You need a higher output for it to get up to some speeds, to get up to decent speeds, and these are pretty fast. At least consumers expect a fair amount of performance out of these cars. That's why you have the larger battery packs. If you had to have a smaller battery pack, 50 kilowatts or lesser, for instance, in those vehicles, it'd be very difficult. The power to weight ratio would come down tremendously, and then getting the kind of performance you'd want from those vehicles would be very difficult, even though you might get the range. So most manufacturers today would ideally like their vehicles, irrespective of what segments and what categories they are in, to offer that 300 to 350 kilometer range. What we need to see, or what will happen in the future, is that battery technology is improving. So we're getting denser batteries with more, how do I say it, better materials utilized in them, which will hold charge for a longer period of time. So it'll still be the same amount of charge, maybe 72 kilowatt hour or a 50 kilowatt hour battery with, the smaller battery pack rather, would give you higher capacities, and that will effectively make range much better. So it's not, at this point in time, going in for a larger battery pack doesn't really make sense in a vehicle, of this size, this segment. 50 kilowatts, the power to weight ratio, for instance, would be ideal to give you that 300 to 350 kilometer range.
But with what you just said, there's another question that I have. Then, would people in India want to spend as much money and go for a car like this today, even though it offers more range? But I might not have the confidence to take this car for a longer journey, given the state of infrastructure and stuff. So, is it the right time to go for a car which has a bigger battery, to launch a car which has a bigger battery?
Again, like I said, it does not matter on the size of the size of the battery and the capacity. Again, it depends on the size, the overall weight also that is there, that it gets involved in this whole equation. And just having a larger battery does not ensure that you will be able to make it on an MG ZSEV. Putting up, a 70 kilowatt hour battery and increasing the weight by about, like, let's say about 300 to 400 kilos is not going to get you higher range, because that much amount of energy, that much additional energy is going to be expended in moving, or rather propelling the car forward, and that effectively will reduce range again. So even if you had to go outstation, for instance, what we need at this point in time for that range to be more effective, to be utilized optimally, is better infrastructure, faster infrastructure. So you need high-speed DC chargers placed at various points. And when I say high speed, a 60 kilowatt hour battery charger, for instance, would charge a 50 kilowatt hour battery in less than an hour. Okay, so you want more of those 60 kilowatt chargers across the country, where you can then utilize or at least spend lesser time. Now, what we're also increasingly seeing, and we've seen this when we were recently shooting the or driving the Mini Electric for that matter. We needed to get a charge on that car, and we landed up at one of the fast chargers, the Tata Power chargers at Bandra BKC, and there was a queue over there to charge the car, which meant that we would have to wait for that much more time to get our car charged, which effectively was apparently someone had just taken their Nexon EV, I believe it was a Nexon EV, and they had left it on charge over there, and the charging had gotten over, but the car was still lying over there. And the Nexon EV, the curious problem over here is that once it is plugged into an electric to a EV charging station, you cannot unplug it until the owner comes and unlocks the car. Now, the owner had left the car over there and walked away. That, of course, meant that we couldn't charge in time, or whoever else wanted to charge the car couldn't charge the car before us. There were two cars ahead of us waiting to be charged. The Tata Nexon EV had gotten done, and the owner just wasn't around to unlock the car and take it away. He had just left it at the charging station, assuming that he was the only royal pain in the ass to have charged his car at that place. But there are more infrastructure issues. What I mean to say is that there are infrastructural issues at this point in time, and you need better infrastructure to get. So range is not the concern at this point in time. It is how quickly and how often can you charge that battery. If you had to go out of station, which we've experienced on our winter drive ourselves, we needed better charging equipment at various locations. If that were the case, we had faster charging units instead of the 30 kilowatt hour, for instance, what you saw at Sundarnagar. If we had better charging equipment, we could have charged the batteries on our cars faster and moved or progressed along much quicker than the amount of time that we spent on that drive. So keep watching out, guys. That story will be coming out to you this weekend. Do watch out for that as well.
Just
Three.
tomorrow at 1 p.m. In fact, we'll show them a teaser in a little while. Simran, Yash wants to know, was there an air conditioner problem in the ZSEV? He's heard of a few complaints.
Only in terms of how the automatic climate control works. So when you set a certain temperature and you leave it on the automatic mode, the system tends to assign the highest lower speed possible. So that's usually max. So it's not like it's going to be at a lower speed 2 or 3, and to get you to that same temperature would be 23 degrees. So you end up having to set it pretty high just to keep the blower quiet. And of course, you could just set the temperature that you want and adjust the blower manually. But again, there's several steps to the blower, and you do need to get to it reverts rather to the touchscreen every time you adjust the climate control. So that brings you out of your Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. So that's the only annoyance.
Okay.
There's
Dilip
another,
wants to. Sorry,
yeah.
Rohit, here's a question for you. Dilip wants to know, is Tata planning to accommodate a bigger battery in the Nexon? He's saying that many customers were expecting that from them, right?
Yes, I don't know if it's a bigger battery. We are still waiting for a confirmation on that. But yes, they are now coming up with a longer range Tata Nexon. The launch should happen anytime now. It's sometime this month is what we are told. They've not officially confirmed the date with us, but it's sometime this month. It's not exactly a facelift. Some people are also expecting a Nexon EV facelift. It's not exactly a facelift. It's just a longer range. Whether they have achieved that with bigger batteries or with a new battery management system or some tweaks to the already existing system, we don't know yet. We don't have the concrete info from Tata yet. So we're waiting on that. But yes, a longer range Nexon is on the cards, and it should be here very soon.
All right. But here's a question from Rahul. Any idea about the progress of solid-state batteries for electric cars?
Well, Rahul, there is a lot of work going on solid state batteries. A lot of Indian manufacturers, for that matter, Amron and various other battery manufacturers, working on solid state batteries as well. But this will take some time. It's still not ready for production entirely and for deployment in consumer in passenger vehicles. Uh, there is some amount of time that we still have to wait, probably another year to 2 years before we start seeing solid state batteries coming into passenger cars. And even then, it will still come in at the luxury end first and then trickle down to everyday mass market cars.
Rohit, Mangesh wants to know that there will be practical changes, but why is Renault delaying the next generation Duster in India? Are they missing out the opportunity by being late to the market?
Depends on what you're expecting with the next generation Duster. If you're talking about the Duster that already exists in the global market, the
Still
regular
can't hear you.
Duster. Can
Rohit,
you hear
your
me now?
audio is, yeah.
Yes, yes, now we can.
Okay, sorry, there was a phone call. Uh, right, so like I was saying, if you're talking about the Euro spec Duster, the one that is being sold in the European market, that Duster is not coming to India. Renault has actually gone on record and told us that it will be the next generation of the Duster, which is yet to be revealed globally as well. It will be that Duster which will come down to the Indian market. So all the learnings that they've now had from the Kiger are also going to be implemented there. Of course, the Kiger is a much smaller product. It's a much cheaper product, but all the low cost engineering that they've seen now. Remember, the Duster is essentially a Dacia product, and Dacia is known for its low cost engineering and being the underdog, being the cost effective alternative to a lot of other vehicles out there. And now here with the Indian scheme of things, in the way that Renault is now working with the Indian suppliers, they're able to get that pricing down even further. They're able to be a lot more competitive despite not having the kind of volumes or numbers that the market leaders have at the moment. So they are now going to be using all of this for the next generation of the Duster as well. It will also be heavily exported from India. That is the other plan for it. And that's the reason why they've skipped the current generation of the Duster that is being sold in Europe, and they'll directly go on to the next one. Also, if you remember the current generation of the Duster that is being sold in Europe, it doesn't really offer a lot more over the model that was introduced in India in terms of tech or in terms of engineering. It was just a small step forward. However, the next generation of the Duster, they're expecting it to be a game changer in a way the Kiger was. So hopefully it will be that. It will be exactly that, and that should be here sometime next year. I think we should be able to get a glimpse of what that next generation Duster is all about.
Okay, I think, Bird, you feel very strongly about this as well. Pradeep says that he thinks that car makers should stop putting all controls on the touch screen. It's very annoying when you want to control things like AC, volume through a touch screen when driving.
Well, I agree with you, Pradeep. Pradeep, putting all those controls on touchscreen is pretty annoying. But I've recently come from driving another car, and what effectively we've seen also now is that the audio controls, okay, are working far better than ever before. So you can effectively speak to the system and tell it what to do. We've seen this on the Aster, for instance, and it works pretty well, quite well for that matter. You can control the audio system. You can control the climate control. You can control various other functions like the windows, the sunroof, just by talking to the system, and it'll do all those. It'll execute all those functions for you. So yes, there is touchscreens work better also because it removes the need for various buttons on a dashboard. It reduces costs. Manufacturers are able to make their vehicles more cost effective. In that way, optimization is very high by putting all those controls on the touchscreen. And then, of course, effectively, once you have voice control, working seamlessly, most of these functions you'll be able to use just by talking to it. I've recently seen Google services also, for instance, working quite exceptionally well for that matter. It's very easy to talk to it. It recognizes what you have to say, even the Indian accents for that matter. uh, I use navigation, very comfortably use navigation. It threw up everything on Google Maps, including the amount of charge that I would probably need to get to that particular destination. It even showed me information like how much charge would be there left in my battery when I got to that particular destination. So all of this is being taken care of. And yeah, while I do, agree with you, I do, empathize with you on using touchscreens. I think they're incredibly distracting. It is how the future of cars and automation is going to be like.
All right. This is somewhat related to what we were talking about, but just before the show started. In fact, Amrish wants to know. He wants to understand whether a battery in EV vehicle has a mechanism that automatically shuts down or sends a danger signal the moment it crosses a certain temperature threshold to prevent fatalities. In fact, we were talking about the charging bit, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the charging bit, Sony. So, Amrish, there isn't a system in all vehicles which detects, overheating. Keep in mind, a lot of batteries in cars essentially are water cooled. So there is a temperature control system in place that regulates the temperature. It prevents the battery and this is essentially to make sure that the battery works in optimal conditions. So the temperature, ambient temperature, also gets too hot, like we are experiencing a heat wave across the country right now. It will the water cooling system comes into effect and makes sure that the batteries are working at that optimum temperature. There's a heat exchanger also that absorbs that additional heat. Keep in mind, some of these expensive luxury cars do this. That heat exchanger works in such a way that it absorbs that heat and then uses that heat for the climate control system also. So this works ideally for European conditions, of course, where some cars don't, use a heating element kind of a thing. They use that heat exchanger, which absorbs the heat generated by the batteries, by the various other electronics, and then dissipates that heat into the cabin to keep the cabin warm. You can't do that with the air, with the cooling system. You cannot cool the car in that manner, of course. But if there are certain cars, certain vehicles do have a temperature regulator, for that matter, that ensures that the batteries don't overheat and and start burning. But not all two-wheelers have this system in place yet. Some of them do, most of them don't as of yet, because they're again single battery stacks and there isn't a very complicated system. Keep in mind, some of the battery packs that can be taken out of this thing don't have that cooling system in them. And they are well, it's not just the cooling system, it's also the the kind of charging that is provided to them, the riding conditions that we use these two-wheelers in. They're all batteries are prone to certain damage, certain wear and tear, and of course there is also the factor of bringing the costs down. Some manufacturers will cut corners to ensure that the cost of the batteries doesn't really affect the overall price of the vehicle, and that means putting in cheaper materials, lesser density, things like that. And this effectively leads to chemical reactions. I know where this question is coming from. There has been a significant number of fires happening around the country on EVs at this point in time, but it's also because the weather temperatures have been going really, really high. And this is affecting the performance of EV batteries, especially two wheelers.
In fact, here's another question. Simran, Shane wants to know, with the conversation on EV bikes and batteries catching fire due to the climate, how are EV cars dealing with this in India? Does the ZSEV come with safety features for this situation?
Yeah, like I had replied in the comments, and Bert has explained, all these EVs do come with thermal protections. Under the regular running conditions, they do have thermal protection to kind of cut back on how much electricity is being drawn from the battery pack in case it does sense that the temperature of the pack itself is rising. Now, if it rises above that as well, um, then yeah, it does cut back significantly and it goes into a limp mode. And yes, the ZSTV does have some expenses.
All right.
Actually, I'm just going to add a little bit here. So,
Yeah.
essentially, let me draw parallels with your regular cars and motorcycles or scooters, right? So, we have a lot of air-cooled commuter motorcycles, scooters that work absolutely fine. Low capacity, the engine doesn't heat up so much, and because a motorcycle is usually open, it's easy for the cooling to happen. But the moment you look at higher capacity motorcycles, you will see a lot of people, especially during the summers, multi-cylinder motorcycles overheating, the coolant boiling, and stuff like that happening. But you'll not see something similar happening with cars because the cooling efficiency is much better. The radiators are much larger. The cooling efficiency is much better. So it's something similar when you compare it to the electric cars versus the electric scooters. The cooling or the thermal management is actually not as good as you would find it in the cars because there is not enough space to do all of that. And if you are stuck in traffic all the time, there is hot air around you. There is hot air coming from the exhaust of the other vehicles as well, and that clearly puts the scooters especially in a very tough spot. So yes, they do come with their own cooling mechanisms as well for the batteries, but they are clearly not as efficient as the cooling mechanisms that you have on electric cars. And that is why right now in the current extreme conditions that we have in the country at the moment, we are seeing a lot of these problems. But yes, there are cutoff points. There are ways to curb all of this, and there have been one-off incidents, and not just with a particular manufacturer, but with multiple brands now. So yes, that is something that needs to be looked into. But these are again teething issues, as we like to call them. We are still at a nascent stage, and going forward, it will just get better.
Okay. Rohit, Here's another question. Is there a chance that Volkswagen or Skoda chooses to launch a toned down Polo or Fabia in India with the MQB AOIN platform?
I will not completely rule it out. Bird is nodding, but I'll not completely rule it out. They still have that chance, but I think rather than going with the NQB A0IN, one of the reasons, like I explained right in the start of the Slavia review that I did, one of the reasons why they did not bother doing a two-wheeler, a two-wheeler, a hatchback, and they went with a sedan instead, is again they will simply not be able to package all of this in the hatchback and get it to the price point where it's actually competitive against the likes of the Hyundais and the Maruti Suzukis of this particular segment. It's certainly not going to be easy for them to do all of that, and that is why the sedan makes a lot more sense, because adapting that platform from a Kushaq or from that crossover down to a sedan is much easier. But bringing it down to the levels of a hatchback and still packaging enough to have that premium edge and then still be competitive enough against the i20s and the Balinos of the world, it's certainly not going to be easy. So I doubt if they'll really do it. I'll not completely rule out the possibility. The sole reason being, we have seen both these manufacturers also do exploit the 2500 unit rule and bring in the T-Roc and the Karo. Maybe they could go down that route and bring in the new Polo or the new Fabia in limited quantities just to keep the market happy. But are they going to earn a lot from it? Not really. So it may not really make much of a business sense. In fact, even for the Slavia or the upcoming Virtus, the underlying communication that has been given to their own sales staff is that do not push the 1.5 liter engine much, because that's an imported engine. The margins are much lesser on that. If there are any warranty claims, they will have to spend a lot more on that. So they are pushing the 1 liter a lot more. So right now, the company is at a stage where they are literally going to be counting each and every penny and making sure that the strategy is absolutely millimeter perfect. And in that, probably these two hatchbacks just don't feature.
All right, but you were there for the Ola electric first ride. So here, this question is interesting because again, we're talking about the scooters catching fire in India. But is that something to do with poor quality assurance or just too much cost cutting? Also, Ola locking into reverse mode abruptly more than once.
Pradeep, there are multiple reasons for an EV two-wheeler. Essentially, I'm not going to point or sort of single out Ola or any other manufacturer. There have been instances with several other manufacturers also, for that matter. This is not just Ola alone. But there are multiple reasons why a battery could catch fire. Like I said, quality is definitely one of those concerns. There could also be various. There are various other reasons, use case reasons as well. Overcharging is another. The wear and tear on the batteries, the conditions that they're ridden in is another cause for concern. There's also the fact that the condition of the roads that we're riding on. Keep in mind, while the battery is kind of protected from physical shocks, there is no guarantee as to how bad the roads are and how well the scooters are ridden over those, and how much of damage actually ensures from there to the batteries. But there is no single reason that we can identify at this point in time. There are investigations going on as to what made a lot of those scooters catch fire, but I don't think they'll be very, very conclusive at the end of the day, and nobody's really going to come out and tell you about it, because there isn't an agency in the country that actually investigates this and looks into these is looking into these fires, for that matter. What I've also been talking recently to another colleague from another publication, a non-automotive publication for that matter, was if there are any regulations governing the quality or these batteries and the manufacture of these batteries. And apparently there aren't any regulations. We're still trying to identify, in fact, if there are any regulations that govern, or that help manufacturers navigate their way in making better quality batteries. And there isn't a regulation at this point in time. The regulations exist for the vehicle as a whole, but not for a battery specifically. So yes, some of these can be, in the case of certain manufacturers, cost cutting could be really, really high, and this could effectively lead to some of these fires that we're seeing at this point in time.
All right, and here's a question once again from Mangesh. Can biofuels become saviors for ICE engines, or the future is all electric?
Mangesh, the future is definitely all electric. Biofuels will not have, will not be able to make that kind of impact for the automotive industry. It's a stop. It's not even a proper stopgap measure at this point in time. In fact, it is not even about when we say electric, also for that matter, it's not about getting your battery charged at a charging station like we know right now, but it's about hydrogen fuel cells for that matter. And we're already seeing work on it. Recently, Gadkari ji also kind of went out and got a drive in experience in the Mirai, and that was in Delhi. And Toyota is already working aggressively on promoting the fuel cell technology. There's already testing work, development work happening across the country at various places. Several manufacturers involved. There is also a hydrogen filling station, and of course tests running on buses for the commercial vehicle segment up in the north, in Himachal Pradesh for that matter, in somewhere near Manali. Is what I hear. So all of these things are already taking place, and hydrogen will be the ultimate, or rather the final goal over here. Is to get fuel cell vehicles into action. That's going to be the ultimate goal. That's going to be the ultimate challenge for most manufacturers today.
All right.
Only if biofuel would have come in earlier, I think Fiat could have survived in India.
Possibly. Remember, survived, I would say we would have made this quick transition to electrification, the rapid
True.
transition that we made. It probably would have been a stopgap measure. We might have had a few more years. But for biofuels to exist right now, the amount of biofuel that you would require is immense. And if there was value in it, we'd stop making food grains and just making sugarcane all across the country.
Right.
That's what we do. So effectively, I mean, you can't do that because the amount of biofuel that you would require to propel the entire industry uh, doesn't really. I mean, the scale is just too high and too thing. That's why you have blended fuels at this point in time. You can use blended fuels, and they will, they certain benefits. But in the long run, even those are not really beneficial. There are far more. There are worse outcomes of using biofuels or blended fuels for that matter than just using a pure electric vehicle.
All right, here's one question from Abhishek Kumar. He says he's planning to do stage one for his Polo 1 liter. How much performance and fuel efficiency can he expect? Also, current rotors from TVS are worst in panic braking. Also, does Europe air intake help?
Simran, that one's for you, the racer boy. We can't hear you.
We will
I,
give
I
Simran earphones as well. We will let you go very soon to go and buy earphones today.
you fixed my
You
laptop
answer this.
speakers instead. Okay, but anyway, coming back to the answer, which I'd given him in the comments. Um, so his tuner claims 130 PS increase in this particular stage one tune, but torque across the rev range does go up. So that slight dip around 1500 RPM, which can sometimes make that 1 liter um, a little bit of a chore to drive, especially in bumper to bumper traffic. That should be taken care of. And yes, we have read some ownership experiences which say that the quality of the brake rotors in the VW cars, the Polo and the Vento, has definitely dropped in the last, I think, 3-4 years. Um, Again, the aftermarket is your best bet. But before you go ahead and change the rotors, I would suggest you look at the brake pads. Uh, Aftermarket options are available from reputed brands. Just shop around a little bit, and you're definitely going to find something good. And air intake, yeah, with the tune, the air intake will definitely help give you a little bit of that induction noise, and for sure just help uh, help deliver the best both power and torque possible.
Okay. Rohit, there's a question for you. Uh, Bernard wants to know whether Yamaha or Honda is planning to launch any adventure or scrambler bikes in India.
No. It's as simple as that. No, nothing. New scooters, yes.
Okay.
New commuters, yes, but no scramblers.
Okay. So, Simran, thanks for joining us. We'll let you go buy earphones or a laptop, whichever is the problem right now. We'll just quickly go through the news and we'll
Hang
be
on, so
back.
There is one question that I want to take before we sing and we get lost in this because there are quite a few queries coming in. This one
Yeah.
comes in from Krish Machinology, who asks if Central FAME 2 plus Maharashtra subsidy on EV, will there be any changes in the near future? Okay, so the subsidies that are there at this point in time, these are short-term subsidies, first of all. right? They're not going to be there. They're not going to be around forever. They are put into place for this initial momentum for the EV industry, for people, for consumers to take on EVs and promote them at the same time by their usage. And over a period of time, those subsidies will vanish. What I'm already aware of, for instance, is the Maharashtra government is not entirely, at least I've heard this from Aditya Thackeray, he's not entirely in favor of giving subsidies at this point in time. And I do agree with him, is that we don't really need subsidies. What are we asking subsidies for? You want to drive better technology, you want to drive more emission free cars. Why do you require a subsidy for it? While on the other side, also, I do agree that more manufacturers need to step into this and offer electrification in their vehicles, and that is one way that we will have more access at more affordable prices for these electric vehicles. At the same time, we need better infrastructure also, so that more people are comfortable using cars or commercial vehicles also for longer journeys, and to fulfill whatever requirements vehicles fulfill today. So I don't think subsidies are the final answer. I don't expect too many changes in this as well. These are short-term policies. They will change very soon, and those subsidies will be taken away once we reach a critical mass, and we are slowly coming towards that. We've seen, I mean, MG, for instance, has just announced that they've done about 1,500. The new MG ZSEV have had about 1,500 plus bookings. Tata Motors is growing stronger by the day, and they've been getting orders and orders and substantial orders for the Nexon EV, for the Tigor EV, and they've now got new Nexon EV long range coming in as well, which means if the range improves, there'll be more people wanting to buy this. So I'm looking forward to us hitting a critical mass very soon, which means that prices automatically will come down. And saying that, I don't mean that you will physically see this, but the value of this will be far greater in the next year or 2 years. Lots of other economic conditions, but perhaps in the next 2 years, all of these EVs will be a lot more affordable than they are today.
Okay. We'll quickly run through the news from this week and we'll get back to answering more of the questions. 2 months after teasing visuals of the Hilux, Toyota India has announced prices of this MPV starting at 34 lakh rupees for the base manual variant 4x4, going up to 36.80 lakh rupees for the top spec automatic variant. This is a lakh to 2.5 lakh rupees less than the similar drivetrain options in the Fortuner. The Hilux has a 5-star ASEAN NCAP safety rating with features that include 7 airbags, vehicle stability control, and a lot more features. Bookings have been open since January, but are now on hold due to the ongoing global supply chain shortages. Earlier this week, Jeep has unveiled a 3-row SUV Meridian set to launch in June this year. The Meridian has been designed alongside the new generation Grand Cherokee and Wagoneer and incorporates many of those SUVs design cues in its styling. The Meridian will only be available with a 2-liter multi-jet diesel engine, as seen in the Compass, paired to a 9-speed automatic and a 6-speed manual gearbox, which has been reworked for better responsiveness and drivability. The suspension setup too has been reworked to reduce cabin vibrations by up to 25%. Honda Cars India has confirmed it will be launching the Honda City e-hybrid in India on 14th of April, which will make it the brand's first mass market hybrid offering in India. The City Hybrid is powered by a 1.5-liter Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder petrol that puts out 98 PS and 127 Newton meters of torque. This pairs with a 109 PS and 253 Newton meters electric motor fed by a lithium-ion battery pack. An eCVT gearbox then transmits power from the drivetrain to the wheels. The Honda City Hybrid should come at a lakh to 1.5 lakh premium over the current 5th generation City. Prices for the City already start at 11.33 lakhs and go up to 15.8 lakh rupees for the petrol versions. Over to you then, Rohit, for the two-wheeler news.
So yeah, the only two-wheeler news that we have, is the Tiger Sport 660. A lot of you have been waiting for that motorcycle. It has finally been launched in the market. I'm not sure if everyone is going to agree with that pricing. It is slightly on the higher side, is what I would say. But we've still not ridden that motorcycle. It is based on the Trident 660, of course. So it gets that same 3-cylinder engine, the triple engine. They're calling it the triple advantage over the competition. And at that particular price tag, the competition is the Kawasaki Versys 650 and also the Suzuki V-Strom 650. So how does it compare against those? That is something that we'll try and answer very soon. But yeah, for now, it is essentially a Tiger Sport 660 that is based on the Trident, and that sport is the word that I would want to draw your attention to, because this is not a Tiger 660. It's not an adventure motorcycle. It's not an off-road biased motorcycle. This is the Tiger Sport. So essentially, it belongs to Triumph's family of sport tourers, which is why it uses a 17-inch wheels from the Trident. It has a slightly reworked suspension, of course. It also has a slightly different subframe for better use with the pillion and the luggage and everything. How does all of that come together is something we'll tell you very soon. In fact, we'll be riding this motorcycle as early as next week. So stay tuned to the OVERDRIVE social media channels. If you have any questions about about this particular bike, just send them through to us. But for those of you who did pre-book this motorcycle, the deliveries are set to start from Monday, is what I'm told. We will be bringing you a walk around of this motorcycle on Monday. So stay tuned to the OVERDRIVE YouTube channel as well. That walk around will be published for you. So definitely do take a closer look at what this motorcycle has to offer. That's the only bit of news that we have, but I'm just going to add one more. In case any one of you have been waiting to get yourself the Honda Fireblade, the CBR, RR, whatever, multiple R's, it has seen a massive, massive price drop today. It's not an April Fool's joke, I promise. It has been massively dropped. I think it was 39 lakh rupees on road, if I'm not wrong. And now you can have it for as low as 26 lakh rupees on road. That's almost 13 lakh rupees. So, I think it's one of the biggest price cuts that we've seen in the premium motorcycle space. So if you have been waiting to get yourself a Fireblade and this price is something that you agree with, get in touch with Honda soon, because I hear there are only 2-3 motorcycles left in their inventory right now, and which is why this pricing. So these are the two motorcycle news that we have for you today on the OVERDRIVE Digital Show.
Rohit, Pradeep wants to know any more information on the Himalayan 450.
No, the same amount of info that you have is what I have with me. We've seen the spy shots earlier this week. But yes, it is coming. The only bit I know is this is going to be a slightly sportier, slightly more adventure-oriented Himalayan compared to the regular Himalayan, which is just an adventure tourer. So where I'm coming from is essentially they are, taking inspiration from the rally motorcycles for the Himalayan 450. That's what I hear. So all the equipment is going to be of a slightly higher grade. It's slightly going to be more performance-oriented and not that laid-back adventure tourer that the regular Himalayan is. So a lot of you out there will be like, 411 versus 450, not much of a difference. But yes, there will be a significant difference in the intent of the motorcycle. So it may not be the ideal upgrade as such for anyone who is probably looking to upgrade from a Himalayan to another Royal Enfield adventure tourer. But this is probably, coming in for people who maybe want something more powerful than something like the X-Pulse Rally Kit, or even the new ESD Scrambler, or the ESD Adventure that has come out. So I think that is what Royal Enfield is now trying with the Himalayan 450. And I think it looks like a promising product.
Right. But can we tell Exploring Earth the estimation for the Jeep Meridian, the approximate price?
But I think it would the premium that you would charge for the Meridian would not exceed about 3 lakh rupees compared to the regular Compass again, because there will be a few feature additions. What you have to keep in mind is that this has the length of the vehicle has increased. It's larger in that sense to come to the current generation Compass, and because of that, you've got a third row of seats in the Meridian. And all of this should not be a very expensive upgrade for that matter. I would say somewhere in the region of about 3 to 4 lakh rupees over the top end Compass is where the Meridian would sit in. Of course, at that price, you would get a few more feature additions. You would get there's a few design changes that we've seen, a few structural changes that we've seen as well to accommodate that increased length. But apart from that, everything else is almost similar to what you have on the Compass.
All right. And Rohit, we have yet another question from Dilip. He wants to know, do you think the XUV 700 is a proper family car considering the size, price, and the type of vehicle it is? Can it be the ideal one to pick for a family for longer drives?
Yes, certainly. Why not? I think it ticks all the right boxes. It's got the tech, it's got the space, it's got the 3 rows of seating. I'm pretty impressed with the build quality. Some of the tech features didn't work when we did our first drives, and even the cars that came to us later were essentially the same pre-production prototypes, so they continued to not work. But from whatever we hear from the customers who have got the production vehicles, most of the features that have been promised do work quite well. So I think, yeah, it is quite a nice car. Its competition, of course, is the Tata Safari and the Hyundai Alcazar. And we do have a story on Overdrive, both in video and text format. So definitely do take a look. Just search for XEV 700 versus Rivals and on the Overdrive YouTube channel, and you should be able to get to that video. Or just head over to overdrive.in and head to the Comparos section, and you will see that review. We've got a proper detailed review. And why I'm bringing this up is you need to take a look at the scorecard as well. We have multiple parameters, so it will also tell you what parameters are probably important for you. You will get a clear understanding of what the strong points of the XUV are, what the strong points of the competition is. So you can just quickly take a look at that. A glance at the scorecard will tell you a lot, from your own perspective as well. So yeah, but to a short answer, yes, the XUV 700 is an excellent family car for the price.
All right. And Bert, what are your views on the hydrogen ICE developed by Toyota? Will hydrogen ICE be the future of ICE engines?
Too early to say. We are still in. This is germination stage for hydrogen ice at this point in time. This is technology that is probably again another decade ahead in the future, and not everything with the hydrogen ice is positive at this point in time. Keep in mind also a lot of Japanese manufacturers are working on this, or they're trying to develop this compared to the Europeans or the Americans for that matter. But there are both pros and cons to it. Too long a discussion to get into at this point in time, and very, very little information also for that matter as to what is happening on hydrogen ice. But yes, we will see some amount of work coming out ahead in the future. Keep that in mind. But we don't know, or rather, nobody knows at this right now, this juncture, whether this technology will have a future or not. I mean, just using hydrogen base for internal combustion engines, there are challenges at this point in time, and what most developers are trying to do is trying to take away those challenges and trying to reduce them and make sure that it's seamless technology. But I guess, I mean, once we have FCVs in place, I don't know what the future is going to be like and what is going to be the next stage. Uh, do we really need a hydrogen powered internal combustion engine, and whether it would really give you the same effect as regular natural gas or gasoline powered vehicles at this point in time? I don't think that is going to happen.
All right. Rohit, yet another question from Bernard. Any idea if Yamaha is planning to launch the MT 03?
No, the R3 and the MT03 both may not happen for India anymore. The R3 was also not received quite well in the Indian market, so it may not happen. Yes, there's the Honda CB350, which has been doing well. So I hope it just pokes Yamaha to, bring in the MT03, bring in the R3 again. But at least at the moment, it doesn't look like it. I think 250cc is where they would want to draw the line, and they are perfectly enjoying the numbers that they're getting with the FZ25 in that particular zone. And they're also happy with the way the 150s are functioning. Right now, their focus seems to be on the scooter market more than anything else. So I really doubt if that MTO3 is going to happen.
Okay. All right. And there was yet another question about scooters. Yeah. Rahul wants to know what's the scene with the Bajaj Chetak EV? Ather, Ola EVs have become a daily sight. Even the Revolt can be seen now.
So can the Chetak. I mean, I don't know which part of India you stay in, but from where we are, Mumbai, Pune, Lonavala also, huge amount of Chetak EVs. I mean, I'm seeing them on the highway as well, not just confined to the cityscapes. I mean, yeah, it doesn't have the range to go onto the highways, but what I mean is around Lonavala, I see a lot of them plying the highways. You will see a lot of people in Lonavala going towards Talegaon and all those kind of places. So I'm seeing a lot of them, honestly, including a lot of test mules of the Chetak. So that also tells us that there is a long range Chetak in the works. That is what we've been told. They're also doing a much cheaper version of the Chetak purely for the city use with lesser power, smaller batteries, etc. So all of this is under development. And yeah, I do see a lot of Chetak. But honestly, compared to all the names that you've mentioned, the most amount of EVs that I'm seeing right now from the two-wheeler space are Hero Electric. Just massive numbers, tier 2, 3 cities, tier 3 cities, and even the metros. So I'm seeing a lot of these Hero Electric scooters out on the road as well. Precisely the reason why probably Mahindra also decided it would be a better idea to side with them and do something with Hero Electric. So there's a lot happening on that front as well. So yeah, but Bajaj, I'm seeing a lot of them on the road.
Guys, also, what I like to add over here also, sales numbers are not dependent on social media posts. While we see a lot of action from Ather and from Ola on social media, they're not an indicator of how well that product is doing in the market. It just means that in certain circles where there's a lot of conversation happening on social media, you tend to have this sensibility, or you tend to get influenced by the number of social media posts that are putting out here. Hero Electric, for that matter, is not very active on social media. They're very, very strong on ground. They've got a larger network across the country. They've got far more products out in the country. They're far higher in numbers compared to anyone else. They're very well established, for that matter. Some of the other new age manufacturers, EV manufacturers, for that matter, are using social media to promote their ideologies and their kind of conversation. So please don't get taken in by those as well. Bajaj also, for that matter, not very strong and not very active on social media where their EVs are concerned. But that doesn't mean that they aren't selling those scooters. Yes, there are concerns. There are a few challenges that I do know of that Bajaj has been facing also, and quite strongly, because they've been significantly affected by supply chain issues, by semiconductor issues, for not just the Chetak but for various motorcycles that they have, and for various products that they've got. And it's affecting some of the others also, for that matter. But I do know that Bajaj is taken a massive hit where this is concerned. But nonetheless, keep in mind, social media is not your go-to for what the actual on-ground scene is like.
Okay, we'll take one last question before we tease our very exciting story for this weekend's show on television. Krish wants to know, it is very crucial and a confusing time for first time car purchasers, very new technology. Should he wait? When will that foolproof EV, dual fuel, hydrogen in budget segment arrive?
Well, Krish, you already got several options right now in the affordable segments, also, for that matter. It'll depend on what exactly is it that you require from your vehicle and what do you need to do. I mean, if you're the kind who would head out on long distance drives, for that matter, I mean, if you're doing a Bombay Pune, drive consistently, then perhaps an EV is not the answer at this point in time. Maybe another couple of years when you have enough of infrastructure and faster infrastructure on Mumbai Pune Expressway, for instance, or any other city, wherever you come from, for that matter. If you've got better infrastructure, lesser charging times that you get that you'll have to use, then yes, perhaps an EV, for that matter, would make a lot more sense. But presently, in the current environment, an EV may not be the best option for those long distance drives. But in urban areas, most of the EVs today, I mean, if you've got about 150 200 kilometers range, which something like the ZS EV would give you, or even for I would assume even the Nexon EV would come somewhere in that the 250 to 300 kilometer range is what I'm expecting from the new Nexon EV long range electric vehicle. Those will work ideally for you, and the costs will not be really, really high. But coming down to the small compact hatchbacks, things like that, this is still going to take a lot of time, because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show as well, there is an issue with the size of the batteries, the range that they can offer, the weight that they carry. All of these, making an affordable EV still isn't an easy job, which is why you also see Maruti, who's kind of not backed out of the EV business, but isn't really coming out with their electric vehicles out in the market anytime soon, because there's still some amount of work to be done. You do not want a car with a 25 or 30 kilowatt hour battery, which will give you a range of about 100 kilometers at best, for instance. That really doesn't suit anybody's purposes, because you constantly be charging your vehicle more often than actually using it. So in that case, you need better batteries, you need more denser batteries which will hold the charge for much longer, and of course give you, because of which you get higher range as well. And this will take some time, I think. Though, however, within the next 2 to 3 years, we will see some of this coming up in the markets. There is a lot of work going on. For immediate users, if you're intending to buy a car, then I think you still need to stick around with an ICE.
All right. So that's about it in terms of answering all the questions. We've lost Rohit right now. But let's first take a look at what we have on the show. If you're already following us on Instagram and you've seen our social media posts about the electric winter drive that the entire team was on. So here's a quick look once again.
An expedition, mountains, traveling without a plan and enjoying life behind the wheel. This time, the wheels are some of the best and the greenest luxury crossovers.
Is it the right time for EVs? Do we have the infrastructure? Will the chargers work? Will you be able to go road tripping with them? Will the charge last? Will you need to change your driving style? There are so many questions. But now that EVs are seeing ascension, I think it's time to go out on a road trip with cars like these and answer all of these.
Like the visual said,
Do tune
tomorrow
in
at
tomorrow,
1
1 p.m. And of course, the story will be out on YouTube as well. So do let us know. And hopefully, next week we'll take a lot of your comments and a lot of your queries. Do let us know if you like this. If you like this weekend show as well. That drive was a fairly challenging drive for us. No one's ever taken multiple electric vehicles to a far off destination like we have. We like playing in the extreme zones, and this is one of those extreme stories that well, we enjoyed executing, but not without its challenges. And let me tell you, those challenges were immense. Uh, because I was one of the last ones. Sony is smiling because she was one of the first ones to reach our
I
destination,
was
and I
going to
was the
also
last
say,
one 6 hours
bold
later.
ideas only come from Bert. We are all skeptical about it, but we go along with the plan, and we're quite happy that we go along with these bold ideas because it's really exciting. It's a very interesting time to be experiencing, so many
Yes,
challenges and yet going ahead.
I think I need to start the startup again. In this, think big, think bold.
Why not? And as Apur said, winter is coming to a TV near you. Tune in tomorrow, 1 p.m. on CNBC TV 18 and Saturday, 12:30 or 8 p.m. You don't want to miss this story. You have to check it out.
Yes, guys, it's a cool one. So hopefully, it should take some of the heat away from what we're facing right now. Have a good weekend. Enjoy yourselves and
Yes.
stay safe. Bye.
All right. See you guys.